Okay, so part six, I think it's part six. As I said, it's going to be long. So what I'm trying to do here is to point out the connections between the neo-liberal libertarian agenda, economic agenda across the globe, in connection with the Pierre Omidyar network. So in February of 2011, the Omidyar Network announced a hefty $4.96 million grant to the Peru-based free market think tank, the Institute for Liberty and Democracy, in short, LILD. We call it LILD. So perhaps no single investment by Omidyar more clearly reveals his orthodox neoliberal vision for the world and what constitutes civic-mindedness than his support for the ILD and its founder and president, Hernando de Soto, whom ON has tapped to participate in another Omidyar-sponsored events. De Soto is a celebrity in the world of neoliberal and libertarian gurus. He and his Institute for Liberty and Democracy are credited with popularizing a free market version of third world land reform and turning it into policy in city slums all across the developing world. Whereas land reform in countries like Peru, dominated by a handful of land-owning families, used to mean land redistribution, Hernando de Soto came up with a counter-idea more amenable to the haves. Give property titles to the country's poor masses, so that they can have a secure and legal title to their own little shanties, shacks, and whatever they might lay claim to, and live on their own. De Soto's pitch essentially comes down to this. Give the poor masses a legal stake in whatever meager property they live in, and that will unleash their inner entrepreneurial spirit and all the nation's hidden capital lying dormant beneath their shanty floors. De Soto claimed that if the poor living in Lima's vast shanty towns were given legal title ownership of their own shacks, they could then use that legal title as collateral to take out microfinance loans, which would then be used to launch their own micro-entrepreneurial careers. Newly created property holders would also have a stake in the ruling political and economic system. It's the sort of cant that makes perfect sense to the Davos set, where De Soto is a star, but has absolutely zero relevance to the problems of entrenched poverty around the world. Since Omidyar's network names property rights as one of the 5 areas of focus, it's no surprise that Omidyar's money would eventually find its way into Hernando de Soto's free market ideas and his idea mill. In 2011, Omidyar not only gave de Soto $5 million to advance his ideas, he also tapped de Soto to serve as a judge in an Omidyar-sponsored competition for projects focused on improving property rights for the poor. The more you know about Hernando de Soto, the harder it is to see Omidyar's financial backing as idealistic or civic-minded. For one thing, de Soto is the favorite of the very same billionaire brothers who play villains to Omidyar's supposed hero. Yes, the reviled Koch brothers. In 2004, the libertarian Cato Institute, basically a Koch brothers foundation, awarded Hernando de Soto its biennial Milton Friedman Prize, which comes with a hefty $500,000 check for empowering the poor and advancing the cause of liberty. De Soto was chosen by a prize jury consisting of such notable humanitarians as former Pinochet Labor Minister José Piñera, Vladimir Putin's economic advisor Andrei Ilyanov, Washington Post neoconservative columnist Ann Applebaum, and FedEx CEO Fred Schmidt, and Milton Friedman's wife, Rosie. Milton was actually in the audience during the award ceremony. Indeed, Hernando de Soto is de facto royalty in the world of neoliberal libertarian gurus. He's been called the Friedrich von Hayek of Latin America, not least because Hayek launched de Soto's career as a guru more than 3 decades ago. So, who is Hernando de Soto? Hernando de Soto? Where do his ideas come from? And why might Pierre Omidyar think him deserving of $5 million? 10 times the amount the Koch brothers awarded him? De Soto was born into an elite white European family in Peru who fled into exile into the West following Peru's 1948 coup. So essentially he was a child when his family left. His entire education took place in elite schools in Europe, including Geneva-based private schools. And now he is touting the privatization of education in Peru. So there's much to say about De Soto here. I'm not going to bore you with all the sordid details. You can read them for yourself. They're damning enough. But this is essentially the kind of clique that Pierre Omidyar wants to associate himself with. And essentially, De Soto was a supporter of the Cato Institute. Well, he came from it, basically. He comes all out of this, a heritage foundation. He goes, he completely was supportive of Margaret Thatcher's policy in England. And Omidyar is supporting all of this. And so you tell me whether Pierre Omidyar is actually looking out for the poor, or whether by looking out for the poor, he wants to make a profit on it as well. And I ask you whether it's not reasonable to ask those questions, particularly when all the, let's say, important investigative journalists are being corralled into this new media venture, now to be headed by somebody like the editor of Gawker. And you're not supposed to ask questions about this. So this is what this new media venture is going to look like. It's financed by a neoliberal economic agenda, essentially Pierre Omidyar, and he's supposed to be this benevolent benefactor to help the world's poor by making a profit out of poverty. And then I'm supposed to believe that Glenn Greenwald isn't smart enough to have looked into all of this beforehand, before he started into this venture with Pierre Omidyar. And on top of that, I'm also supposed to dismiss that it was essentially Glenn Greenwald who was pro-Iraq war before he became a journalist, and that he also stands behind and is pro the decision of Citizens United. In other words, he supports the decision of the United States Supreme Court that gives Citizens United credence. And then I'm supposed to believe that he is still a somewhat independent journalist. Now, you know what? I think everybody has a price. I think all of us are corruptible. I don't think somebody like Mark Ames is beyond that either. I think Mark Ames is aware that Pando has been taken over and is being financed by the same neoliberal libertarian nutcases. So I'm not sure, where to place the blame. All I can say is, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And for anybody to think that this whole media venture is without much larger financial interest involved, whether Glenn Greenwald, thinks of himself as still independent, is actually besides the point. The larger point is that this neoliberal libertarian agenda is making its way across the globe, and it's probably not for the best and in the best interests of global citizens. That's all I have to say about it. So remain skeptical about all of this, and never place your eggs in one basket. Never, ever believe just one single person, one single organization. I try to be pragmatic in most things, but in this instance, the combination of big think tanks, particularly free market think tanks, and neoliberal ideas combined with neoconservative brouhaha, which has basically been pushed to the side for the time being. It's not like John McCain is we're not talking about John McCain or any of these warmongers. War can be waged by other means. War can be waged by driving entire nations into poverty. And that's when the real wars start. So I'm asking myself, where this is all going to lead to. Because certainly I don't believe organizations neoliberal policies in terms of free market policies and pushing this even further. And the only reason they've gone as far as they have is because of deregulation to start with, that this is going to be some sort of a solution. Anyway, you can make up your own mind about it.